So, when you think of TikTok in Tunisia, you probably picture dance challenges, viral trends, right? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on a much, much darker side of the platform. We're talking about a world of social scandals, totally unregulated money, and real human exploitation. All right, let's get into it.
You know, we all see that polished final video, the millions of views, the online fame, but it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Beyond all the entertainment, what's the hidden price people are actually paying to go viral? That's exactly what we're here to figure out. Okay, so first things first, we've got to understand the engine that's driving this whole thing, the influencer machine. Because look, in Tunisia, and really this is true pretty much everywhere, TikTok is so much more than just an app. It's this massive force that's actually shaping culture, what's cool, and how people behave. And you can see the appeal, right? I mean, who wouldn't want the fame, the power to influence what people are talking about, and of course, the money. But there's always a but. The flip side is this intense, constant pressure. You have to perform non-stop, and that can push people to do some pretty risky things. Plus, you can become so financially dependent on the platform, and that's where some, well, let's just say some really questionable choices start to look a little too tempting. So what happens when all that pressure just boils over? Well, that's when things can get pretty vicious. We're moving past the general idea of influencer culture now and diving straight into the specific scandals and the kind of toxicity that has been bubbling up to the surface. So what does that actually look like day to day? Well, we're talking about creators posting content that's way over the line, stuff that really clashes with local social norms. We're talking about targeted harassment campaigns happening live in real time, right there in the comments and live streams. And then you get these huge public fights between influencers that get their followers all riled up, creating these massive online mobs. It is a messy and frankly a very harmful environment. But believe it or not, all that social drama, that's only half the story. If you really want to get to the heart of this problem, you've got to do one thing: follow the money. And in this case, we're talking about something our source material calls toxic money, and it's flowing through a financial ecosystem that is completely unregulated. Okay, so toxic money. What does that even mean? It's not just a few people sending donations here and there. No, think bigger. It's an entire system of virtual gifts, of payments flying across borders, all of it happening with basically zero oversight. And what happens when you have that? You create the perfect storm, a breeding ground for fraud, exploitation, and all sorts of illegal stuff to just flourish. So your next question is probably, okay, but how does this actually work, right? How are people actually moving all this money around and gaming the system? Les breaks down the playbook. It usually starts small, with simple things like unregulated virtual gifts. But from there, it can escalate fast. You get these fraudulent schemes where influencers are asking for money based on total lies. Then you start seeing these huge transactions that, frankly, raise a lot of red flags for money laundering. And here's the kicker. It often culminates in these cross-border payments, sometimes from diaspora communities abroad that completely sidestep taxes. They're basically creating a whole shadow economy right there on the platform. Look, all this talk about financial schemes and online drama, it's easy to forget that these aren't just abstract problems. There is a very real and often hidden human cost to all of this. So the big question is, who's actually paying the price for a platform that has so few guardrails? And this is where it gets really serious. There's a quote from our source material that just cuts right to the chase. It's the most vulnerable people, we're talking minors especially, who are at the biggest risk. They're the ones being manipulated into sending money or getting coerced into doing these dangerous challenges. And sometimes they're even pressured into making really inappropriate content themselves. It's just heartbreaking. And this stuff doesn't just stay online, affecting one or two people. It creates these massive ripple effects that spread out across all of society. Think about it. Public trust in social media just tanks. You've got influencers with zero accountability who can quietly nudge political opinions. And maybe worst of all, the culture itself starts to shift, as all this risky, harmful behavior suddenly becomes normalized. All right, so the problem is crystal clear, isn't it? And the holes in the system are big enough to drive a truck through. This is not something that's just going to fix itself. So that leaves us with the million-dollar question. What on earth do we do about it? What's the actual solution? And that brings us to the final and honestly the most important part of this whole conversation. How do we actually forge a safer platform? Because it's easy to sit here and point out all the problems. What we need is a real roadmap for accountability, for meaningful change.
The thing is, there's no single magic bullet here. The solution has to come from everyone. It's a shared responsibility. You can think of it like a four-part plan. First, the creators themselves need to step up and be more ethical and transparent. Second, the platforms. Yeah, TikTok, we're looking at you. They have to get way better at moderation and tracking where all this shady money is going. Third, the regulators, the government. They need to write some actual laws for the 21st century. And finally, there's us, the audience. We have to be smarter, more critical, and actually report this stuff when we see it.
And that really leaves us with one big final question to chew on. Because this whole story, it's so much bigger than just one app in one country. Our lives are moving online, our communities are digital now, so we all have to ask ourselves, who is ultimately in charge of keeping us safe? Who is the gatekeeper of our trust? Is it the tech companies, the government, or, at the end of the day, does that responsibility fall back on us?